What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Ghouls Gaming and Tech channel. We are talking about the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game. Remember that title, Kill the Justice League. We're going to talk about this game today. Obviously, if you get the upgraded copy, you have early access to playing the game. The game doesn't officially come out until this Friday, so we're going to talk about this. To say the least, I'm a big Rocksteady fan. I do like the Arkham games. I loved Batman Arkham Knight, I believe it was. So I know that they can produce a good game. Now, when it comes to this, it's not the worst, but it's definitely, it dropped in ranking based on my expectations. And I don't know if that's my fault because I expected too much, but with a title like this and characters as iconic as these are, I expected a little bit more than what I got, but we're going to get into that. Before we do get into that, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy this video, and if you're new or returning, make sure to hit that like button if this content was helpful. Now, disclaimer, before we get into this, everyone will have their own opinion. My opinion is not the end all be all. You might have a completely different experience playing this game than I did, but this is just my experience with this title. So I will say the beginning of the game starts off pretty strong. The story is pretty compelling. It kind of draws you in with where the story is taking place and where it is aimed or projected to go. It starts off strong, but I'll say by the ending, it landed a little bit flat for me, in my opinion. The ending wasn't that great. Now, the main bad guys are the Justice League, but it's really Brainiac. Brainiac is taking over the minds of the Justice League, which is the whole reason why she's trying to stop him, is because Brainiac's taking them over. They're doing things out of their character. They're causing a ruckus, destroying things, hurting people, all that good stuff. So that's the main premise of our position and the bad guys. The Suicide Squad basically were taken or broken out of prison by Amanda Waller to help her, you know, defeat the Justice League. Essentially, that's where we're at. So we are first going to talk about the things I do like. Number one is the character models. I like how each individual character looks distinct. They're very iconic and recognizable. They didn't take too much liberty with changing how they traditionally look. Every character pretty much stands out. Their voices are pretty good. The voice acting is done very well. The traversal is another big thing. How they all swing or dash or get around the city is pretty amazing. With Boomerang, he kind of teleports. He taps into the Speed Force and kind of uses that to dash or teleport throughout the map. Harley Quinn, she has like a Spider-Man mechanic. She pretty much swings throughout the city. She has like a little zip line like Batman does, but she also has a little drone that flies above her that she can grapple onto and kind of get around, which is pretty cool. King Shark, he jumps really high, to put it simple, and he can also dash. And then Deadshot, he has a jetpack that allows him to kind of glide or hover throughout the map. The mechanics of the melee is good when you think about just the core of the melee. They have some pretty cool like finishing kill scenes or action scenes when you do your melee. And then also the weapons itself. The weapons, they're pretty distinct as far as each type, like when it comes to like a SMG, shotgun, you know, things like that. They feel different in that regard, but we're going to touch a little bit more on the weapons later. And then another thing that I like is the online component. Not all games have that, and this game, they didn't have to put it in if they didn't want to, but the fact that they allow you to play with 4 different characters, it only makes sense to allow online play with your friends. So if you and your friends have a day off and you want something fun and, you know, mindless to do, you can hop into a session and play together. Now I have to get into the things that I don't like. Again, this is my opinion, and again, there are some things I do like, but we have to talk about the things that I don't like. First thing is the enemy type is pretty bland. I mean, aside from the Justice League characters themselves, which are pretty unique in their own right, the enemy type is pretty bland. You know, you have 3 different types of glowing enemies basically, and it's kind of hard to stay in it when you're looking at the same enemies over and over and you're just defeating waves and waves of them. The next thing is the gun variation, like the upgraded guns and skills of them. After a while, yeah, they do seem distinct as far as the gun types, but upgrading guns and switching between similar guns in that category, they pretty much feel the same. It's not much of a difference of feeling. Yeah, they do have different perks when it comes to like freezing power and critical hit and things like that, but overall the guns feel pretty bland. And going back to the enemies, they could be challenging at times, but overall it's fairly simple to beat them and destroy them. You're gonna have some that kind of take a little bit longer, but the way that the gun mechanics and the combat is, it's not too hard to figure out how to defeat an enemy. It's just the only thing that takes a long time is defeating the constant waves of enemies and traversing the landscape to get to one enemy pile to the next. Now, when it comes to the missions, they're pretty stale. I mean, it seems like it's the same concept throughout the game, and I kind of fear for the end game when it comes to that, because trying to play this game after it's over, I just foresee what the end game entails. And when it comes to the mission, it's pretty much protect an area for a certain amount of time while defeating waves of enemies, follow a vehicle for a certain amount of time while defeating a wave of enemies, and then kill a certain amount of enemies. And again, with the enemy type, they're almost pretty much the same. It's just 3 different types of glowing enemies outside of the boss battles. Speaking on the end game, it pretty much consists of upgrading your character, which is what it seems like that's what they're going to be primarily focused on, is upgrading your character, buying skins, getting upgraded weapons, and things of that nature. It doesn't seem like there's really a purpose for the end game besides continuing to cause mayhem and get into these big fights with these wave of enemies, and then throughout that you're upgrading your weapons and using new weapons to hop back into the game again and destroy more enemies. To me, that's not as compelling as I want it to be. I mean, there has to be some other aspect to keep a large amount of the fan base in at the end without getting their attention away from what the main purpose of the game is, and which is the Justice League. There's doesn't seem to be much of a Justice League element in the end game. The game does have a skill tree, but it doesn't factor in as much as I thought it would. You do have some upgrades where when you're reading them in the skill tree, it sounds like it might be super useful, but when you're actually out in the world and playing the game, you don't really notice them that much. Like if there's a specific skill that you want and you're like, oh man, this will be super useful in combat and just traversing and things like that with that character, when you're actually in the world, it doesn't seem like that skill is, as useful as you want it to be, or just factors in at all. The UI also gets a little cluttered at times, definitely when you're in a area where you're fighting a lot of enemies. There's so much going on, there's so much feedback on the screen, and it's hard to rein it in sometimes because there's just so much going on, so much information they're trying to tell you. Yes, you can go in the settings and kind of take some of that stuff off, but just so you know, when you first hop in the game, it's going to be a lot of feedback that you're going to see on your screen, which could be overwhelming to most. So I say all that to say, Rocksteady, they do know DC Comics. It's not like Rocksteady is doing this for the first time. They have no clue. They do DC very well for the most part. It's just this one lands a little bit short, but on the bright side, they do land jokes. The cutscenes to me are the best part. I rather watch full cutscenes than playing a lot of segments in this game. That kind of sucks, but hey, it is what it is. And the whole kill the Justice League part, it falls short. I mean, when it comes to those interactions where you're actually interacting with the Justice League and what I thought it would be, killing a member of the Justice League, it's not what I wanted it to be. Not to say it's bad, but it just falls short, and I'm trying to do my best without spoiling the game for you guys, but the whole kill the Justice League part is not what it should be. I'll say that. So overall, I'll say this game didn't really know what direction it wanted to go in. Definitely with the whole Justice League part. Yes, I know this one is primarily based on the Suicide Squad, but the Justice League is pretty much as a big of a character as the Suicide Squad, and you have to mirror those and marry those pretty seamlessly to pull this one off the way most people wanted it to be pulled off. There's a lot of things going on here, and overall, at least from my experience, it's an average game. It's not bad, it's not the worst, but it's just not what I expected, and it's just okay. If you're into mindless killing of enemies but with some decent to really good story elements here and there, then this game is for you. But like I said, you can form your own opinion. You don't have to take mine for the end all be all. Overall, I'm concerned for the in-game element after you beat the game. Players' interaction with the day-to-day grind of this game. There is a paying system. There is some things that you can pay for, but that's completely up to you if you want to do that. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, because this is not just about my opinion, it's about yours as well. Let me know if this was something that you guys enjoyed, if it was helpful, and if you're thinking about getting this game, and if you have the early access copy, what's your experience so far? But hopefully with updates in the future, we can get some better execution of this game. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.